Welcome back to Drive Your Thoughts podcast. I'm your host, Master Coach Carrie Marshall, and it's time to go after those goals.
Yeah, whether ready or not, life's coming hard, no breaks, no stop. And if you put me on the spot, don't get it twisted, I never drop. If you feel a bit out of control and out the box, here's a way that you could drive your thoughts. Turn this podcast on, it's a lock. Carrie Marshall on the clock.
Hey everybody, are you excited for today? We have an amazing topic that we're going to talk about. Let's get into passion and why it is so important in your life. So when I say the word passion, what comes up for you? Do you think about maybe that hot, steamy romance novel? Probably not. But for a lot of people, passion brings up different emotions, thoughts, maybe even experiences. And so today we're going to talk about why passion is an important emotion that everyone should have in their life. So when I talk about passion, what I really think about is I think about actually people being so heavily involved in a craft, a hobby, an interest, a topic that they are obsessed about it. So the past couple of weeks, I've got to meet some amazing people. And the one thing that I have loved is finding out what they're passionate about. Because if I can find what people are passionate about, it makes really fun conversations and topics. So just a couple of things that I've been able to talk to people about in the past couple of weeks. I've been able to talk to people about owls. Had a really fascinating conversation about that. Formula One racing, also really fun. And I think that that's something that we're going to talk about is how other people's passion becomes just such a fun place to live in. Let's see, what else have we talked about? We talked about zoology with somebody else. We talked about quilting. So many different things. Book writing, of course. I had a really, really fun all-day event with two amazing authors that I was able to go to, just the three of us. So that was really fun. So the one thing that I noticed, Disney, that was the other thing. I was like, there was somebody that was really fanatical and passionate about Disney. So with all of these different people, those were just a couple of examples, but as I've been able to meet with so many different new people in the last couple of weeks, I've noticed that when we can find passion, and it's not even the passion that is a shared passion, but when I can actually talk to people about what they're passionate about, some really fun things happen. So the first thing is what I just mentioned, that when somebody is passionate about something, it is like it electrifies the room that we're in. If I can get somebody talking about their passions, then it creates this excitement. They light up talking about this. So when I was talking to this woman about owls, she's a photographer who goes up and does all these amazing photography shoots up in Yellowstone and everywhere around the country, all around owls. So she starts to talk to me about the process of finding owls in the winter. Now, I've never done that before, ever. But listening to her and watching her get engaged with the topic was amazing. You could just tell by the way that she speaks and by how she interacts and her eye contact and the small little things that she says that, is totally unique to her field. It was just electrifying. Like I said, it electrifies a room because when we can exude passion, it is one of those energies that absolutely raises the energy in the rest of the room. And so when we talk about finding passion, that's one of the reasons that it's really important is because passion is energy and it is a very electric type of energy. So the other thing that I love to do is I love to really think about what I'm passionate about, like what lights me up. So I know, for instance, right now when people talk about writing a book, I want to sit down with them for hours. I get so excited about the writing process and where they're at and where they're struggling and how it's going for them and their experience that I really can just get lost in the conversation. And so that's the second thing that I see when people are passionate is that we get lost in whatever it is that we're passionate about. Now, the reason that that's so important is when we find that we are always sticking to, we need to say this or this, and like it's a timeline almost, then it almost becomes boring. But when we can get lost in topics and things because we're so interested or curious or passionate about it, it once again brings up something that is crucial to us succeeding, which is creativity. So one of the reasons I love to talk to people about what they're passionate about, even if I know nothing about it, Formula One racing, I really didn't know anything about it. I could maybe tell you one type of race car that was in it, but that's about it, like the company. But as I was talking to this gentleman about Formula One racing, and he's had such an amazing experience with it since his childhood, it was really fun to just see that as he was talking about what he was passionate about, my creativity absolutely went up so much. Because as he was talking about what he was passionate about, it connects to my creativity and my passions. So as I was having that conversation, I started to have really amazing ideas about how I could actually make the experience for my clients with coaching and book writing and things like that so much better. I would have never told you that talking to this gentleman about racing would have then translated to that. But that's what happens when we're talking to other passionate people. So like I said, it's really important for you to talk and find where other people's passions lie. But today, what I really want to focus on is I want to focus on your passions. So I want you to think about what you're passionate about. So now here's a couple things that we want to look at. Number one is, what does a passion look like? Here's a couple of things to look at. First off, what is something that, once again, you can get lost in yourself? Is it a hobby? Is it an experience? What is it for you? Now, the first thing that I'm going to tell you is please never judge what that is for you. We all are interested in different things. And often what I see is sometimes adults will hold back on what they're passionate about because they're worried about getting judged. So if you were to just remember that if this is just for you, not anybody else, what would you love to get passionate about? Or what is that thing that you're just so focused on and that it is so fun for you? So like I said, it can be anything. It can be collectibles. It can be movie series. It can be anything that you think is something that you're just all in on. And so allow yourself that space. One of my clients is really interested in astronomy. And so he was talking to me about this and he said, tell me when I'm going to bore you because I get lots of blank looks when I start to talk about the stars and telescopes and things like that. So already he was kind of like letting me know like, hey, I know this is not everybody's thing, but I told him like, hey, what if you were just to drop that and you were just to allow yourself to be so lit up by what you love and not worry about me? And he was like, that would be amazing. I said, okay, for 15 minutes, I'm all in, let's go. And so that's what he did. And it was interesting that he was like, when he was done, I said, how did that feel for you? And he goes, it felt good to not have to be thinking about if you were okay. And so we have to allow ourselves to have these passions. Now, some of you are sitting there thinking like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. And this does happen. I see this happen a lot with people in their 40s and 50s. And a couple of things to happen. Number one is we've kind of built up lives around our kids, businesses, things like that. And so we've kind of stopped doing hobbies. One of the things that's actually a requirement for all of my clients is to have 2 hobbies, and they have to have one of them be an outside hobby, meaning that they have to just get outside. And if any of you follow me on Instagram, you know that every single weekend I put the exact same thing on my Instagram stories. What do you think it says? You know, it says get outside. And that is another thing that is so important, is being able to spend time outside. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a future episode, but being outside is also going to help with that. So if you found that you have lost passions and hobbies, what I want to offer is I'm going to have you do an exercise that I've also walked so many people through, but it's called Date Yourself. Too often we're spending so much time with other people that we're not allowing ourselves to have the space to figure out what we like or reconnect with things that we used to love. So I'm going to use my dad as an example here. I don't think he listens to the podcast. Let's see. But my dad, when he was a teenager, he really loved, he picked up a windsurf board somewhere randomly. Now we live in Utah, and so windsurfing is not a big thing here, but I remember talking to him about why he started windsurfing, and he's like, I saw it. I thought it looked fun, found some random gear, got it, tried it a couple of times, and I loved it. But then, of course, life happened. He married my mom, got right into college. I think he had like 4 jobs. And so then life picked up really quickly, and he wasn't ever windsurfing again. So why do I tell you this story? Because I think that this happens to a lot of people. We start and we have passions and things that we love when we're teenagers or maybe even into college. But then when life starts to happen to us, we start to drop our hobbies and our passions, and we start to fill our life with other people. Now, this is not a bad thing. Absolutely not. I'm not telling you that you need to drop your family, but what you do need to do is have something that is a release that doesn't have anything to do with family or, and that's not to say that you can't do your hobbies with your family, but it shouldn't have anything to do with work. So for instance, if you are golfing and that's your hobby, but you are always doing it with work associates for work, then it's not a hobby anymore. That is absolutely a business activity that you're doing. And so for instance, I used to go snowboarding a ton. I love snowboarding. It's one of my passions and hobbies. But I did notice that when I started working up at a ski resort as a snowboard instructor, then my hobby became now my business. So you want to make sure that when you are in that space that you're finding your hobbies again. So let's get back to date yourself. So if you're in that space of not really knowing what you want anymore, then I want you to carve out some time that is actually date night for yourself or date day. And what I want you to do is go and start to do different activities. So I was talking to a mom. I was coaching a mom, and she was talking about how she felt like she had really lost herself. And so we talked about this activity of like, okay, you need to go out and you need to actually date yourself. You need to go out and do activities. You can start with activities that you know you've loved in the past, or you can start with new ones. And so what she did was she took on a new one, and she went to a local rock climbing gym. So when she came back, I was like, how was rock climbing? And she was like, it was amazing. She's like, I'm not good at it, but she said the people there were really fun. She's like, I loved being able to try and solve. And she's like, I was not thinking about my kids the whole time. Like my goal was just to get from point A to point B and get to the very top of that rock climbing wall. And she's like, I loved it. It was so much fun. It was like a big puzzle for me to solve. And so from there, she started rock climbing more and more. And so then it became one of her hobbies that she had just for herself. And, at one point she said, I thought about bringing my kids, but then I realized like I need this to just be mine for a while, maybe until my kids get older. And so she decided to just keep it for herself. But she was talking about how now that she has this rock climbing date for herself every single week, how she's able to feel like she's more of herself, how she has space to think a little bit more, how she feels a little bit more lit up about life, which is why we want to make sure that we're creating passion in our lives by the things that we're doing. So if that passion is gone, I really want to encourage you all to go out and date yourself, figure out what you like. Go and take an art class. I did horseback riding for a couple years ago. I loved it. It was really fun. But it was fun because I was doing something new that I had never done before. But I wanted to just kind of go back into that space of like, well, where else? Where else do I have a passion? And so remember that if you can allow yourself the space to figure things out, you can also just kind of see that there's those little inklings of you that are out there. And that when we can actually bring passion back into our life through our hobbies, our relationships and things like that, your creativity will explode. And that's something that is really fun. So with dating yourself, just make sure that you're trying new things. The other thing is you always can go back to intuition. So why is that intuition so important? I'm going to use an example of somebody that I know. I have this friend, and she has always been so fascinated by bow hunting. She is not a hunter. She has never killed anything in her life, but she's always just been really, really interested in bow hunting. And so when we were talking about this, I said, well, why don't you go and like take lessons? And she's like, are there lessons for bow hunting? Like, I don't know. Somebody's got to know. So at first she pulled back and she was like, that's silly. I'm never going to do it. Like I'm this mom and I'm this and that. But so she let it go for a couple years. Well, then she was kind of struggling once again. And I said, okay, we've got to find some passion in your life again. Like, let's go back out. And I asked her about it again. I'm like, hey, did you ever do anything with bow hunting? She's like, no, never. And so I bought her on Amazon. I bought her like a toy bow hunting kit. And I was like, listen, go and shoot arrows in your backyard, just as you're like hanging out with the kids or whatever. And so she thought it was funny and, she gave it to her son or whatever to play with. But then one day they were out in the backyard and her son said, Mom, you should shoot with me. And so she's like, okay, I'll do it. And she's like, it was the weirdest thing. But as soon as I picked it up, and it's too small for me, but she was like, instantly, I just felt like it was like home. And she's like, I don't get it. And so she's like, I felt silly, but then I went up to like a sporting goods place and said, yeah, I want to get like a bow and arrow. And they were very sweet and helped her out. And then she said, okay, now I have this. Like, she asked them, like, what do I do? Well, to her, they had like a local club that she could go to and actually take lessons and things. And so she said, anytime I'd walk in, I'd feel so embarrassed, so silly, all of the things, want to leave, get all the looks from all the people, like in her pink jeans, But she said, but as soon as I would pick up my bow, I'd feel like it was home. And so she said, the more that I would show up for my life, even when I was embarrassed, the more I started to connect to this passion. Passion is so important in our lives. If we're not living for the things that we love and finding and exploring to find those things that we love, then what are we living for? What are we doing in this life if we're going to work every single day, day in and day out, and not having something to actually look forward to? Same thing with relationships. If you can't have passion in your relationship for whatever thing that is, however you define passion in your relationship, then what is that relationship for? You can have a passionate relationship with so many different people in your life, but I want you to really ask yourself, like, what is this relationship for if there's not passion behind it? I think that you can tell. Like, I've had so many of my friends on the podcast, and I'll continue to, because those are the people I love to have on my podcast, are my really close friends. But I'm passionate about my friendships. I love creating deep connections with my friends. I love being all in with my friends and their experiences and what they're going through and supporting them. And so remember that passion isn't just about a relationship between partners. It's also about any type of relationship that you have. So if you find that you're lacking in passion, I really want you to take this as your opportunity to take a check, that really amazing check, to say, what am I doing? And if I don't have things I'm passionate about, how am I going to change that? Because it really is up to you to create that experience and that feeling of passion in your own life. Go out, find your passion, spend some more time with them, and watch how much it will connect you to your creativity and to the success that you're trying to create in your goals and in your life. I'll catch you later. Bye. Thanks for listening to this podcast episode. If you're ready to get in the driver's seat of your own life, you can come and follow me at Drive Your Thoughts Coaching on Instagram, or come and see more ways to work with me at driveyourthoughts.com.
Yeah, whether ready or not, life's coming hard, no breaks, no stop. And if you put me on the spot, don't get it twisted, I never drop. If you feel a bit out of control and out the box, here's a way that you could drive your thoughts. Turn this podcast on, it's a lock. Carrie Marshall on the clock.